We're here with Amber Tamblyn, author of Dark Sparkler, most recently. Amber, I was thinking when I read this book and thought about the research you had done about these actresses, it reminded me of a poem from your previous book, Bang Ditto, that was called Role Research. And it occurred to me, like, what's harder, researching these biographies or to write poetry, or researching, a role to act out?
God, that's such a great question. I think researching a character to act in is, at this point, a very endemic experience for me and comes very instinctually and naturally. I think researching the often, mildly similar lives of people that died at the age I am, which was 32, like around, give or take, on either side, is much tougher, especially when they're your peers and or in the same business that you've been in. I think that brings to mind a lot of old wounds, young wounds, and feeling kind of, lost at a certain era of my life when I was younger. Whereas when you're researching a role and you're, you're acting, I'm not like much of a... I'm somebody who goes too deeply into something. I go very instinctually into something. So in acting, I don't do research. I don't do that as much. I go with what the material provides and the underlying subtextual instinct that it brings.
Right. You kind of might have answered this, but it feels like writing poetry and acting are such different art forms.
Yeah.
But because you do both, do you think that either informs the other in any way?
Yeah, I've been asked this question so many times, and I really think about it every time. I really do, and I'm like, each time a book comes out, or each year that goes by that I write more poetry and do less acting, or do more acting and write less poetry, does the answer change? Yeah. Does it shift? Does something inform more than the other, acting or writing? And I think it definitely shifts a lot, but, I think certainly the writing will always be informed by the experiences, not of the acting itself, but of the business of acting. That will never change for me. As long as I'm acting, I will have, stories to tell through poetry. But not really the other way around. I think that acting is totally separate from writing. It's a totally separate life that I have.
Yeah. Something I wanted to talk about with Dark Sparkler is the physical object of the book. It's just so powerful. It obviously has artwork by really interesting people, but also colored pages and lots of graphic design elements. Yeah. And I just wondered when, that aspect of the book kicked in for you as being integral to the collection.
Well, I actually, when I was first putting the manuscript together for Dark Sparkler, I had really set it up in a presentation form of how I thought it was going to look with the artwork, and that includes the David Lynch piece that has the words over the art. Yeah. I did that all sort of in the presentation that I did in Acrobat or something like that. And I had put together a full presentation because I knew that there were a lot of publishers that were very confused by what the book was. Was it a poetry book or was it an art book? And those that published exclusively poetry are usually smaller nonprofits. They can't afford to really put out an art book or to put out color art in this way. And then anyone that could put out color art were questioning and going, well, should there be more art in it, and should be less poetry, or, no one had really done something that was sort of that specific, and that was also so sparse within the book. Yeah. They're not equal, so it's more poetry, less art, but the art is also very prominent. So it wasn't until I met my editor at Harper Perennial, this wonderful guy named Calvert Morgan, who saw the book and took my lead with what I had already put in there and ran with it. And I never had any of the colored pages, or there's even a really cool page that has a bunch of lit prints on it. And the cover was his idea with a wonderful designer from Harper Perennial. But they took the theme of sort of pungent, vibrant, explosive, sparkling color that was talked about within the darkness of the death, and they really ran with that. I think sort of tangibly in the book, which is great. Which is all any author could ever ask for, is that it's like, here's this crazy idea I have, and then someone goes, great, let's run with it, let's do it. It really is, especially when you're thinking like big concept, like this book was.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Last question. From the epigraph to the epilogue, your father's a real presence in the book, and I just thought you might want to say something about that.
Well, the book's dedicated to my dad, and, my dad grew up since the age of 9 being an actor, and he's 81 now, and it's really hard to change your identity from something that's so publicized and doesn't belong to you anymore when you become part of the public. And people see you as one thing your whole life. And I dedicated the book to my father, the author, not the actor, because he's been working on an autobiography for maybe 10 years now. And I think it's really hard for him to go over the past. I imagine it's hard for anybody to do that. You have to go through the mistakes you made. You have to think about the people you hurt. You have to, retell the stories you've told 100 times. It's very, very hard. And so I really wanted to encourage my dad to, as I continue to do, to write, to know that there's more to him, and to push through that sort of closed door that I think he's felt has always been closed for him outside of the world of acting. Besides fine art, which he's always been a part of, I think writing seems like a very scary thing to him. So I just wanted to encourage that part of him, as I would any artist, who's been in one specific type of art form their whole life. It's really hard to see yourself outside of that, especially if you've been branded into that. Yeah. So the book is really a love letter to my father's struggle in a lot of ways. Of being a child actor, growing out of that and getting into art, and then trying to act again and knowing the fears of being forgotten. Nobody wants to be forgotten in any capacity, no matter what your job is, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you so
very
much.
Yeah,
of course.